welcome back to the Open Book Podcast. I'm your host, Ren, and this is your source for all things bookish. Last episode was very fun, but today we're going to take it down a little bit and talk about something really serious. I haven't really spoken about it a lot. I did one video about it while I was still on my semi-hiatus on YouTube, and I have spoken about it in a couple of videos on TikTok, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more and kind of go into the conversation between separating art from the artist and why personally I don't think that's currently possible to do with J.K. Rowling. So if anyone has been following me on the internet over the past 11 years since I've been making content, you will know that I was a massive Harry Potter fan. It was my entire life. I can't pretend like I only liked it a little bit or I didn't like it, and I cannot erase how much it meant to me, and it did, and I still have really fond memories. 95% of the friends that I have because of Harry Potter, because we met at Cursed Child, which I saw so much in the theatre. Again, I cannot pretend that I didn't. I spent a lot of money on that show. I spent a lot of money on Harry Potter merchandise and Harry Potter books. These shelves, 8 of these shelves were once filled with Harry Potter stuff. And I can't pretend that didn't happen, and I'm also not going to pretend that that didn't happen. It would be silly and weird for me to pretend that I never liked it and to completely ignore and erase its part in my life. My story of Harry Potter is that my mum read them to me when I was very little, and by the time I was 7 I was reading them myself. So I grew up with it. Harry was my favourite, and they meant so much to me. My first tattoo was supposed to be Harry Potter. It wasn't, luckily. It was actually Percy Jackson instead, but it meant a huge deal to me. My bedroom was essentially the Slytherin common room. I was, So if you're new and you've never encountered me online before, this is how much level of love of Harry Potter we're talking about. It was my favourite thing. However, so it was very heartbreaking, and it was difficult when J.K. Rowling started trickling in a couple of hateful and harmful comments. And at first I really wanted to have the benefit of the doubt and give her the benefit of the doubt and think maybe she's just not educated, maybe she just doesn't understand. But then it continued after people educated her, after people sent her links to proper articles and scientific research and conversations, and after trans people tried to talk to her and she still didn't listen. And I realised it's not that she's uneducated, it's that she is so set in what she believes and it is truly what she thinks is right, that I don't think there is any educating her. She's not going to listen, but she's not going to listen to anyone. And that was when I kind of pulled the plug on my love for Harry Potter. I sold loads of my books. I got rid of loads of Funkos and removed a lot of my Harry Potter stuff. I kept my original copies because they were the copies I had when I was a kid, and they're really old and stuff anyway. And there were a couple of things that I kept that, like I said, from when I was a child. But they are in boxes under my bed. They are not on display. I don't really want them on display. It's completely different, and it's really hard. So so I want to talk a little bit about separating art from the artist and why I felt like I had to kind of really distance myself from Harry Potter, and why loads of other people have also felt the same way. I privated all of my Harry Potter videos. You cannot I accept they're there, but they just been made private. So separating art from the artist as a concept is something which is done quite a lot, where we look at what someone's created, and if we don't particularly agree with something that the person that made it said, we're able to kind of separate art from the artist. This happens a lot when it comes to people that have created stuff in the past, and a lot of the time they're dead. So we can talk about people in history that were questionable. I mean, the example I will give is the Beat Generation. Very questionable people. Their impact on literature, particularly Allen Ginsberg with Howl, was phenomenal and had a really, really, really amazing impact on the way you could write about queer experiences and queer people. And I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on that, because I think that's not only a big part of like literary history, but also a big part of queer history, two things I'm very interested in. So you know, they had a really big impact on literature. They were also a bunch of questionable men, and the older I get and the more educated I was on them, I was like, okay. But if I went and bought one of their books, I wouldn't be directly contributing to them. Like, they don't benefit anymore from me purchasing their books. And I feel like you can kind of, that is how I think the older stuff is slightly justifiable, because they no longer benefit. And I'm not saying we completely erase what they did. We don't do that. I think it's equally important that we talk about who they were and what they did, because so much is left out of history about specific people. So I think it's really important that when we look at what someone created, we also talk about them. But I feel like we can now, so much time has now passed, doesn't benefit them. Like, Jack Kerouac is not profiting from me having multiple copies of On the Road. My multiple copies of Harry Potter, if I continue to buy them, because for some reason they're still releasing like the weird, like, I saw recently there was a promotion of like Hogwarts at Christmas with illustrations and stuff. Do we need it? Like, why are we still doing it? Like, I'm so confused that like Bloomsbury are still publishing her in really odd ways. Like, we don't need a Hogwarts at Christmas book. We don't need that. No one needs that. Put your energy into publishing authors that aren't billionaires. Let's do that. But if I went into a shop and I bought the newest Harry Potter edition or whatever, she's going to profit from that. And as we have seen recently, which is kind of what has spurred me on to make this video, she's going to use that profit, and she's going to use the money that she has to donate to anti-trans groups. So, J.K. Rowling donated £70,000 to an anti-trans group who have had this long-standing battle to define what a woman is. I'm going to read this article so that I get it all right. So if you're watching the video, that's why I'm looking at my computer. So she pledged the money to a campaign on behalf of 4 Women Scotland, who are raising a challenge against the definition of women in the 2018 Gender Representation on the Public Boards Act. So the legislation is good, and it aims to ensure that all public boards have a 50% women gender balance in non-executive member positions, and it includes a definition of the word woman that is inclusive of trans women who have a gender recognition certificate, meaning these people have transitioned. This is not a man walking off the street, putting a wig on and going, I'm a woman now, I want to be part of this. These are people that are transitioning. Right? These people have transitioned. So there were things in place to know that people were transitioning, right? And that we can we can help trans women, right? So the 4 Women in Scotland, who J.K. Rowling pledged 70 grand towards, argued that by including trans women in this definition, which is ridiculous because trans women are women, so we're including women, would impact women's rights and express concerns about wider implications for single-sex spaces. But you're including women. Trans women are women. They lost the appeal last November, but they have been. They announced they've been granted permission to appeal the decision in the UK Supreme Court. The group quickly set up a crowd justice fundraiser to cover legal costs, and J.K. Rowling donated £70,000 to that, saying, "You know how proud I am to know you. Thank you for your hard work and perseverance. This is truly a historic case." Pink News said that they reached out to representatives J.K. Rowling, who said they don't comment on her personal donations, and the author will not be making an official comment on it. For Women Scotland did say though, on X, Twitter, that the group was uncharacteristically struck dumb after donations to the campaign, and they identified that it was J.K. Rowling that made that decision. And it's actually terrifying, because they have raised more than £130,000 from over 2,000 people, which is genuinely terrifying. She donated 70 grand to someone who wants to basically just very anti-trans. And it's not the first thing she's done. She is very calculated in the way that she talks about this online. So she will share she'll share articles where it will talk about a trans woman in prison or a trans woman who's committed a crime. And she will make it about the fact that they're not actually a woman. But she will also post that, and then she'll post something else, and then she'll post it again. And it's this kind of subliminal consistent subliminal thing of trans is bad, trans is bad, trans is bad. If you scroll her Twitter, that is kind of the consistent that you get. But she's looking at the 0.01% of trans people that have committed crimes. She shared something recently about a trans woman who committed a crime and hashtagged it "not our crimes," as if it's well, no, because you didn't commit the crime, so obviously it's not your crime. And it's not about gender. The person was just a shitty person. Them being trans did not cause them to commit a crime. They commit a crime because they're a shit person. You're what? So it's just so bizarre. So every kind of opportunity she gets, she just really hones in on this trans is bad rhetoric, and it's consistent. It's consistent throughout. It's consistent what she's been talking about. She's been doing this for 4 or 5 years at this point. She's not it's quite scary. She doesn't want to focus on the 99.9999% of trans people that don't commit crimes, and she doesn't want to talk about the fact that crimes are committed more against trans people than trans people commit crimes, and she doesn't want to talk about how it's actually more unsafe for a trans woman to use the men's bathroom than it is for a trans woman to use the women's bathroom. And no one wants to ever talk. She doesn't ever want to talk about that. She doesn't want to talk about those statistics. She doesn't want to highlight those statistics, and she really doesn't want to highlight and have the conversation of the danger and discrimination that trans people face daily, because she is contributing to that discrimination, and she's so very actively doing so, and she's so proud that she's doing so that it's genuinely a little bit terrifying. And she still profits off of everything that she does because she is still very well alive. So that's kind of why I feel when it comes to J.K. Rowling, separating art from the artist isn't really possible, not at the moment, because by giving her that money, and I know that she is I don't know if she has billionaire status, but she's a multi-millionaire, I think. Multi-millionaire, billionaire. She's got a lot of money, and it's very likely she's never going to run out of that money. But we're just going to keep giving her money if we consistently buy things that she profits off of. And I think that's the same with the Galbraith books as well. I think because it's a different name, people kind of are but she very much profits off of that. And I actually think it's absolutely hilarious that she acts like trans people just make this random decision to be I'm going to be a different gender today, and it's a choice when it's not a choice, and yet she literally chooses to be a man with the Robert Galbraith books. She's I'm going to pretend to be a man with these ones, but yet she literally criticises people in which it's not a choice and it's just who they are, which well, what are you even doing? You directly profit off of pretending you're a man. It's baffling to me. She is a nasty piece of work. And she said she still profits off of everything. So buying her books is giving her more money. And she has publicly said that she believes that by her sales still being a thing, and by people still supporting her and still following her and still engaging with Harry Potter content, that she believes that that means that they agree with her. And she is taking that as a sign that people agree with what she is, you know, how she is and stuff, and what she believes. And that is also why I kind of had to have that step back, because I don't want anything that I do to contribute towards her thinking at all that what she's doing is okay. And it's quite hateful, because she has a very, very, very big platform, and she is sharing things in a way which makes people genuinely believe, you know, she is kind of spreading this story of trans is bad, and you know, people are on her side, and she's got quite a big following of people that believe her, and it is why, you know, things like this contribute to why there's a rise in hate crimes towards trans people, and why there's a rise in people wanting to strip rights away. Because if she's there with her platform donating £70,000, people that aren't as educated are going to listen. And she knows that, because she's curated this story which isn't true, but that people are believing, and that's really, really scary. I do think I remember her sales being down at the end of 2022. I don't know what her sales were last year. She did have a new strike book out last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was pretty high. Scary. You know, and she pretends, you know, she says she's all for the LGBT community. She believes that, you know, she says she didn't want to hurt anyone, but she is, and she's not listening. I think if you didn't want to hurt anyone, you would be listening to what people were saying. If you really supported all LGBTQIA plus people, you would be listening to what we were saying, and you're not, and so you don't. And I do think that she needs to, you know, I do think we kind of need to, it does need to be taken more seriously, I think, because the hate that she's spreading is genuinely quite terrifying. I know that Harry Potter meant a lot to a lot of people. It meant a lot to me. It meant so much to me. But trans people and the discrimination they face, that is more important than my love for Harry Potter. And there are so many other books, there are so many other things that have such an amazing impact, that are so important, that we should be uplifting. Harry Potter doesn't need any more promotion. People don't need to be talking about Harry Potter. It's one of the biggest things in the world. And I'm not saying that we pretend that it didn't have a profoundly amazing impact on literature, because it did. It you know, historically, it broke records after records, and it was phenomenal, and it had this impact which I don't think it really has been seen in another book series. But like, her being a terrible person and that coexist at the same time. Like, we don't have to be like, oh, but she did all these amazing things. She did do all these amazing things, but she's also being an awful person now and promoting loads of hate. And I think that it's important that we look at that as a whole when it comes to her, because she is still directly profiting off of our support for Harry Potter. So I think we talk about people as a whole, and we know that they had this impact, but also were this type of person. But I think circumstantially, depending on who it is, we have to make the decision of, can we separate art from the artist? And I don't think with J.K. Rowling we can currently do that. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I made a little TikTok about it, and actually I was really appreciative of the people that didn't fully know. Actually, rather than just being like, actually messaged them, was like, I want to be educated on this, can you help? Which I think is really good. And I think that's kind of the conversation we should have. I think that it's important to educate and to actually have this discussion, so that we know where everyone stands. So yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts. Thank you for listening or watching this episode of the Open Book podcast. If you want to come hang out with me on other social medias, all the links will be in the description on the YouTube channel. It's at renfrancis _ everywhere, so come and check me out. I hope you guys are doing really, really, really well, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.